Ben.
Ed.
Yeah.
So I think it should be apparent at this point that I do not keep up with the anime seasons, and I think it's obvious from the references in my previous monologues.
We haven't even started talking about the current season. Why are you bringing that up?
I mean, in terms of relevancy, like for the topic itself, like I'm pretty sure that the anime in this season would be better to discuss, I guess.
Are you sure? I mean, I've been watching some of the current season. Let me have a quick gander. Of course, there's Bleach. I think the Bleach animation so far has been absolutely stellar. Then there's My Villain Academia, aka My Hero Academia season 6.
Oh wait, there's another season.
Yeah, it's ongoing, man.
Oh shit, I didn't know.
Yeah, and now it's an adaptation of one of the better parts, which
Alright.
is the My Villain Academia arc, where the villains take kind of like they take a more protagonist role compared to the heroes. But hey, ultimately it's all about conflict between heroes and villains.
Yeah, I should take a look.
Yeah,
Right.
there's also a Blue Lock released, and
Right.
I must say, it's really hitting the audience, man, with all the unexpectedness of Muneyoshi's works. They're all getting debated, especially from the first episode. It's pretty lit.
Ah,
Then
I still haven't. I don't watch that.
then you have to watch this, The Eminence in Shadow. Kage
Right.
no
Yes,
Jisuroku.
I looked. I saw it on your screen, and I was gonna bring it up.
Yo,
I
it's
expected
lit.
you.
It's
Oh,
lit.
is it not? Is it not just so shit is good?
No. So I think I read the manga for the most part, so I'm not too well aware of the light novel or visual novel or web. No, I think web novel.
Mm-hmm.
So the first episode was it caught me off guard, man.
Oh.
It's pretty derpy, I must say. I think they adapted something that's not within the manga itself, and that's why. We also didn't get to see Buff Sid, which is very funny.
Yes, that is most unfortunate.
Yeah,
So,
they kind of like had a very, in my head it would be fillery first episode. Then the second episode is when shit gets real, whereas in the manga it's kind of like a short interjection before it just jumps straight into the funny part.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
so I guess I should take a look. But
Yeah, there's more stuff. I'm not too up to date on Spy Family Part 2, but I did watch the first episode. The Chainsaw Man was actually pretty lit.
Oh yeah, I've been hearing good things about that as well.
I'm not too sure if the animation is like rotoscoped, if that's the right term, kind of like Kengan, but it's just the right amount of I would say the fluidity trade-off was worth the kind of dopey animation at times. Yeah,
Yep.
but of course, putting Makima's ass in front of in I think episode 3, just leaving it right there, full 15 seconds. Absolutely wonderful fan service as a cake enjoyer, I must say. I was very pleased. Off guard, but pleased.
I see, pandering to the fans that really matter.
Of course. It's all about the fans, man.
Yes. Well, in any case, in this episode, we will be talking about anime that recently ended last season.
That would be
The Song of the Night Walkers. Yes.
Yofukashi no Uta.
Yes, the one that you keep calling Call of the Night.
Yeah, Call of the Night.
Yes, no, Song of the Night Walkers. But anyway, yeah, I gotta say, not bad. For of everything to note, the soundtrack was lit, man. Like, no shit, I was listening to the OST while writing this script, specifically the Lost Time.
Yeah, I think instead of the word "so," it's now going to be the word "lit" that we'll be abusing in this episode.
Yes, it will be lit. There will be I don't think we will be mentioning much about the soundtrack because this will be an episode about functionalism, right?
Functional what?
Functional what? Functionalism. So, in any case, over the last two episodes, last few episodes, that covered sociology, we explored mainly two perspectives, conflict and interactionism. And for the last of the three that we'll be covering today will be functionalism. So to that end, Song of the Night Walkers provides plenty of examples for me to explain the perspective, But before we take a leap into this perspective, I think it's best we get a little inebriated so the ideas flow better.
Sure. That's what I do like. I'm a bit thirsty.
Alright, so what do we have here?
You're the one who brought the bottle.
God damn
Tell
it,
me.
yes. Alright, so what we have here today is a Jim Beam.
Jim Beam.
Yes, a bourbon whiskey. Is the one that you get from the shelves at your NTUC. It's like a very standard kind of whiskey.
I think it's the standard bourbon at Don Don Donki for a bit more Japanesey reference.
Yes, interestingly, it's owned by Suntory, the Jim Beam brand.
That's nice.
Yes. So yeah, it's a cheap whiskey. And
Relatively.
And yeah, it's I guess it's a party drink that you should see everywhere alongside Jack Daniels, I guess.
Yeah, I mean the tagline is it's a damn good bourbon that's even better when shared, and there's two of us right here. So what say we get to popping open the bottle and having ourselves a neat pour?
Yes, why don't we? Alright, so this will be a Jim Beam neat and chilled, cause we do that at people drink whiskey chilled.
Yeah, it must be a first time.
Yeah.
It's mine. JK, alright, so we're going to be going with the classic Jim Beam, the one that is super common, off the shelf. It's a straight bourbon, so I'm expecting a little bit of sweetness and a bit of oaky flavor from the barrel. What about you, Ben? Any high expectations?
Not really. I mean, I expect it to taste sweeter than the Jack Daniels, but not that much different, I guess.
Alright, let's first take a whiff.
Yes.
It smells weak. It smells like weakness.
I mean, you've been drinking a lot of strong stuff. Let's not forget the Lagavulin.
Lagavulin.
Is it? No, what was it?
I'm quite sure it's either Lafroig or something else.
Lafroig?
Yeah, Lafroig.
Lafroig. Can't remember.
Is it there or Singleton? Or is Darren?
One of them. It tasted like pure alcohol. I think we did on stream.
You sure it's not the Loch Lomond?
Loch Lomond? Was it? I think it might be.
Yeah, that's redacted. You know, we kind of like
Oh,
King
right.
Crimson that a little.
Yeah. Whoops.
cut
Well,
it
maybe
out.
in the future.
No, never again.
Never
Alright,
again. Oh,
that's
no.
it. Let's have a drink. Cheers, Ben.
Yes. Cheers.
Tastes like nuts.
Yeah. Spicy, nutty flavor. Yeah, the spiciness, the nuttiness lingers for a while.
Spice jumps into my nose. It's like on first sniff, it's not a very strong alcohol smell. That's why I said it smelled weak. And after having a nice sip, yeah, it's starting to feel a bit like 40% alcohol.
Might be because it's chilled.
Are you sure?
Maybe. Well, you can definitely taste a slight hint of vanilla from the barrel.
Nah, man, it's tasting like my infinity bottle. You know, it just tastes of nuts.
I think that might be just you. Have you been having a few too many nuts recently? Wait, what?
Nah, bruh.
Yes, you like these nuts. No, never mind. But to be fair, it does go down quite smooth.
It goes down
Surprising.
quite smooth, even though I don't know. It's like in smell it's weak, and then when you taste it, it's strong, and then when it goes to your mouth, it's also tolerable to smooth. Depending on how big of a sip I had, it's a bit like a normal distribution in terms of process.
What do you think?
For the amount you poured me, I think it's I wouldn't exactly want to drink all of it immediately, but yeah, it's something that would last a while. It's a smooth drink, but it's just, you know, nuts, man. Not exactly these nuts, but nuts, man.
Yeah.
If I was a chipmunk, I'll be probably slurping this down.
Yeah, might be a bit too overpowering in that aspect, but
I think we'll see how it fares once it's diluted down with a mixer. And today we have a brand spanking new setup for it.
yes,
I-
indeed.
I busted out. These are Tiger Beer mugs, which
It's a
kind of
fourth-
like 2.5 times the capacity of a shot glass. And we're going to be using them for mixing.
Yeah, we will probably be... Oh, there's a whole fleet right there.
Well, Ben, what mixes do you bring?
Right. I got soda water, ginger ale, and Coke Zero, but the wrong one.
Yeah.
I mean, it said that Coke Zero. I didn't read any further.
Wait, you mean you didn't saw the watermelon and strawberry flavor?
Nope.
Oh then.
Yeah. Well, in any
it.
case, we still have the regular Coke Zero, so...
Yeah. I'm looking forward to trying this out mixer. I heard it's a pretty good, it's a good mixing whiskey that should go well with most mixers. I think one thing that we can think of trying in the future is lime juice. Yeah, but with that said, I think this wraps up the whiskey review neat.
Yes.
With Jim Beam Bourbon.
Alright.
Now
that my throat's been lubricated a bit, let's start the rant. So, before we can really understand how Yofukashi fits into the functionalist perspective, we have to understand exactly what this perspective entails.
True.
So, Ed, I remember you mentioned that you had an encounter with the perspective before. Could you share a bit about what you know about the topic?
You see, my encounters were on Wikipedia. But what I do know is that structural functionalism, or functionalism as it's simply said, is a study of society, which is what sociology basically is, and how social functions, such as social values and norms, shape the individuals living within the society. And that such social functions are necessary for several ostensible reasons, such as the prevention of high crime rates and moral decline, which would lead to participation in socially irresponsible and possibly undesirable behaviors. I'll leave what those behaviors are to your imagination.
Well, you are indeed, for the most part, correct. You are indeed very well read. Can't say that most people will know of such topics, much less actually read the wiki page for them. But alas, 'tis but scratches the surface of the perspective. So, as the name suggests, functionalism is a study of how the different parts of society, so you mentioned social values and norms, but beyond that, the institutions that carry out the functions of society come together to form a functioning society, and how each of the roles that these institutions play constitute what will become of society.
Right.
So yes, one of the ways that this perspective has been framed in is the study of the society as an organism.
You mean kind of like an analogy, right? Because I think I saw this.
Yes. Yeah. It is by Herbert Spencer. So imagine the society as an organism with the institutions as the organs within the organism. So each organ has a very specific role to play, and each of the organs is integral to the overall functioning of the body, and they interact with each other. So none of them really stand alone, and if one fails,
everything collapses.
Yes, good luck, have fun. But yeah, much unlike the conflict perspective, which is the Marxist perspective that I've been going on and on about in the previous episodes.
Yes, Marxism.
Yes, Marxism. So the functionalist perspective seeks to understand why societies are stable and how societies remain stable over time.
Stable in the sense of like equilibrium, or stable in the sense of not falling into disorder?
Well, essentially not falling apart. How they continue to exist, because the conflict perspective actually frames society as like power domination and exploitation. So if society is all that, just like is just exploitation, then you wouldn't expect it to last forever or last long time. You expect a lot of conflict, essentially. So there must be something to explain how society has lasted for so long.
Is it the society itself, or how the society is ran?
That is a good question. But to be fair, both kinds of societies, the many different kinds of societies, both in the sense that there's the communist and the capitalist societies in the modern era, most societies are able to last for a decent amount of time. So we have to be able to explain how societies are able to remain, how they continue to exist, right?
Like despite
the difference. Yes, it's like how the Roman
operation.
Yeah, it's like how the Roman Empire has lasted so long, and how even despite the differences between our society today, our society continues to exist, right?
Yes.
So regardless of the administration of the society, they continue to exist. So it's always a good place to start to identify why do they continue to exist. So that is essentially functionalism. So yes, this makes sense as a field of study. While conflict theory does provide some explanation for why societies remain stable as well, that's besides the point. We're here to study about functionalism today.
Yes.
So to elaborate on the functionalist perspective, the individual is but a sum of the institutions that influence them. A very top-down perspective, if you can imagine that.
That's pretty
right? Yes.
There's a very linear way of looking at it, and I can see that.
Imagine it as more leaning towards the structure side rather than the agency side, in that your decisions are structurally determined. Is it? Yes, it's determinism rather than agency.
Right.
So, yeah. Each institution in the society imparts onto the individual the values and expectations of the society and disciplines them into becoming a functioning member of the society.
Right, but if that's the case, right, wouldn't it be very limiting when it comes to the agent's individual freedoms?
Oh, yes. You see, that part is the uniqueness of the functionalist perspective, in that the founder, I won't say founder, but the one most associated with
Is
the
it like
functional...
the man who coined the term?
I wouldn't say he coined the term, but his perspective is the one that formed the basis of modern functionalist perspective. So his name is Emil Durkheim. He viewed excessive freedom as detrimental and even harmful to humans.
Not even like even possibly harmful, but just straight up harmful.
It is just straight up harmful, right? So he posed it this way: imagine you had infinite freedom to do whatever you wanted, and you were not bound by any values, or you're not socialized into performing any roles or having any goals set by society. How will you make sense of your life in the grand scheme of things?
Absolute chaos and egoism.
Exactly. So this is something that causes society to fail.
Makes sense.
Excessive amount of individualism.
Cooperation is the key for a successful society to grow.
Exactly. So individuals thrive under certain levels of restriction. Not excessive, but just enough. And so he believed that the purpose of the institutions serve to restrict the members of society in such a way as to allow them to explore within a limited amount of freedom the possibilities that they may attain in society. So, for example, the kinds of roles that they may perform, such that society establishes such roles. So, you could have the role of a child so long as society is able to establish the role of a child.
What you mean we're not talking about roles as in a very strictly occupational kind of role, but
more than that.
So roles, it's a more meta perspective on what roles mean here.
Meta perspective, maybe not so. It's just a definitions, like
a semantic
difference.
thing.
Yeah, sociology has its own dictionary of definitions.
Seems about right.
Yeah. So roles in the sociological sense. So role as a student, role as a citizen, that kind of role. So, in this excessive amount of freedom that comes from a lack of any social restrictions is what Durkheim called excessive individualism. In that, if individuals do not have anything restricting them, that they would just fall into chaos.
So I think it is kind of like gun laws. You don't restrict the kind of freedom that people have to obtain weapons, and then people would just there'll be different groups of people, and there'll be a malicious group which uses weapons that result in pernicious death of others and within the society. not against other societies, as in warfare.
I think it's a bit off the point. It's more towards like if you go to school without any idea of what the school is preparing you for, so just general education without telling you what you can be in the future or guiding you towards any certain goal, then you will be quite lost in thinking about what you want to be in the future, which is something that we'll cover in the episode later.
Sure, I think education is a very pertinent topic within this scope of study, and there'll be quite a lot of things that you can talk about. I think that education systems have its roles, but the content that is covered by the system is not necessarily what the people want or fetishize or desire, but rather it's something that meets the institutions or the government's intentions.
Yes, and that is essentially the function of the education system. It is a necessary part of the society in that it needs to create citizens that are functional for the society. So whatever it teaches is going to be necessary for them to be able to function in society rather than what we want to be taught. So, the secondary school education system could teach sociology, but that's not really pertinent to our...
Wait, will we be looking into the Singaporean education system? Because
Not
I think
specifically.
there's this take, I would say, that the schools are not... Okay, remember how I was saying that the education system does not teach what the people fetishizes or desires, right? So it's what people hold to either an excessively high standard or it's what people desire because they have a necessity for it. So there's some things that people actually want when they're more cognizant of is knowledge of how to manage their finances. And this is not something that is intended to be covered or will be covered within the education system. Never will be. Your taxes will never be taught to you for how to manage.
To be fair, in Singapore, you don't really need to study that, but
it's what people want to know.
Yeah.
You see, people want to know the kind of things that would benefit their adulting.
Yeah, but you see, the schools aren't supposed to prepare you for adulting. They are preparing you to be a worker.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, which is that the education system in Singapore is not intended to teach you how to be an adult.
Yeah, but
it's what people want. They're intending to make you. It's meant to kind of like streamline you into getting further education.
Right, and that's kind of the role of education in society. So it is supposed to perpetuate society, not exactly make you a better person per se. It is just to perpetuate society. So whatever is taught in school may not be something that you really need in life, but it is something that society needs.
Or is it like society deems it necessary for its flourishing at that point in time?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, because there's the whole massive human resource argument that is posed for the country.
I mean, that's a discussion for the education experts out there. I am merely just stating, there is a certain lean towards, education is also a value judgment in that what is being taught in school is something that needs to be decided by society, and they have interests.
Is that gonna be a functionalist take?
I mean, that's a different perspective. I would say it's more conflict based, but that's besides the point. So yes, linking back to Yofukashi, throughout the series we learn about the main cast, so Ko, Nazuna, Akira, and to a lesser extent Mahiru. Throughout the series we learn through the main cast, to a lesser extent Mahiru because his arc was not exactly covered in the anime series.
Yes.
About their fascination with the night. So we learn about the problems that they face in their lives that led them to embrace the night. Well, everyone except Nazuna, because she's
a vampire. Spoilers.
Yeah. So through their internal monologues and interactions with the other members of the cast. So Ko, who is the main character, was supposedly a model student prior to his delinquency. Questions what he wants to be in the future, as well as his relationship with others in his life.
I can see that.
Nazuna experiences similar questions pertaining to love and how to interact with Ko, as well as what it means to enjoy the night. So this was hinted at during her, I think it was episode 5.
I think it's a central theme actually. Yeah, which is Nazuna's failure to establish actual romantic relationships or to be able to casually interact with the concept of romanticism.
Yes, that was the central theme, but the side theme was her failure as a walker of the night. To enjoy the night, because she has been given too much freedom as a night walker. But anyways, Akira is also portrayed here to have encountered problems related to her role in society and thus her inability to sleep at night. Though her arc is also not really explored in the anime. It was a touched on topic in episode 2, but that's about it.
It's her role in this case would be that of a student, right?
Yes, her role would be that of a student, model student, because she did mention that. But just that, yeah. So for Mahiro, we never really got to his arc in the anime, so I can't tell you about how his problems really resulted in his delinquency. You have to read about that in the manga. But
doesn't his delinquency have to deal with older women?
Older women and family, but that's besides the point. Let me assure you that his arc does reflect some of the points that we'll be raising with regards to functionalism.
Yeah, I unfortunately have not read the manga, so you're probably gonna have to make up for that.
Burn the heretic. But in any ways, in the same way that functionalism attempts to explain the stability of society, it also gives reasons for why certain people happen to just fall between the cracks, so to speak, and positions institutions as playing a critical role in explaining their deviance. Different role. This is where we begin our deep dive. But before that, I think the alcohol has worn off a bit. Well, to be fair, it hasn't really worn off. It's quite a big glass, but that's what's written in the script. Wait, what? Yeah, so I think we might need a bit more of that sweet nectar to dull the depressing stuff that's gonna come up.
Yeah, hopefully not a double dose.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben, let's have our Jim Beam on the rocks. I see you have poured yourself a 1.5 times serving. I'll liberally give me a fair bit as well.
Yes, I may be a bit, I may have overjudged.
Yo, what happened to the alcohol is worn off, man. This is, alcohol is working perfectly. Your sense of
this is working perfectly fine. Yeah, but hopefully the ice, helps to dampen the spiciness a bit.
Alright then, let's give it a shot. Cheers, mate.
Cheers. Yes, help dampen the spicy takes. Wait, what?
I mean, it did dampen the spicy notes of it. Less is going to my nose.
You just drew out the nutty, spicy flavor a bit more, I guess. But it does bring out a bit of sweetness at the start. Just very slightly more than when it was straight.
It's kind of fortunate they're getting the sweetness, because all I've been tasting are nuts in my mouth. At this point, I'm starting to wish that I'm a chipmunk.
I thought you were one that was more familiar with the taste of nuts.
I mean, I'm supposed to be.
Yeah, but it's... Yeah, nuts.
Nuts. Oh, boy.
Yeah. Oh, at least it's not just pure alcohol.
I mean, the smell of the alcohol is already very subdued, and now it's just weaker. Weaker, definitely.
Weak sauce.
Weak sauce?
Weak sauce.
Sounds about right. Alright then.
But it's still fine, I guess. And drinkable.
Yeah, I think on the rocks and neat, not much of a difference, just the subduing of the spicy notes. I'll be looking forward to when we have the mixers.
Yes, that's supposedly the better part of this. Alright. So,
back to Yofukashi no Uta.
Yeah, it's time for the spicy takes.
Spicy takes.
Spicy takes.
Is it weaker than the Jim Beam?
Hopefully not. I mean, I'm trying to make content here, so
Alright, Ben, hit me.
Alright, so to understand why our cast of characters act the way they did, we should first give a name to the experience that they are experiencing.
Gold experience.
Wait, what? Sorry, I didn't catch that reference.
Gold experience. Requiem.
No.
No.
Yeah.
So what about the experience?
Was that a JoJo reference? Yeah,
there was a JoJo reference, but you didn't catch it.
Yeah. Oh shit. Anyways, yeah. So the experience that they are experiencing is one that we can name as anomie.
What is anomie? It's not just like two words, right? As a singular A, and then normie as in a normie.
No.
Ryaju.
This is a sociological term that isn't spelled the way you think it is. So anomie, spelled ANOMIE, as explained by Durkheim, is when too much freedom becomes harmful to the individual.
So it's a state and experience.
Yes, it is a state.
Okay.
So yes, when one has the ability to choose from a very wide range of options, this may lead them to become confused about which choice would be the best.
So paralysis by analysis.
Kind of, in the sense that there's no restrictions.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. So this is where institutions supposedly come into play, in that they are supposed to restrict the availability of options to the individuals, but because there is a lack of support from the institutions, one may not be privy to the set of norms or values that govern an aspect of society, and they also lack the resources provided by these institutions. So this may be a result of the institutions being too big to be able to adapt to the times, but that's a discussion for another time.
Right. So we've been talking about institutions for quite a while, right? So could you give me like a more clear-cut definition of institutions in a sociological sense, as well as some examples?
Yes. So institutions, in the sociological definition of institutions, is a function of society. So it's like so it is a system within the society that governs a certain aspect of life.
Like justice.
So, justice is one institution. Family is another institution. Education is an institution. You do not really need a physical institution like the Ministry of Education to deem a certain aspect of society an institution. Institutions can be any aspect of society, and it does not need a physical institution for it to constitute an institution. So think of family as one. Right. So the institution of family dictates that certain values be passed on from parent to child, governing the relationship between parents and children, etc., etc. And yeah, so these are what institutions generally are.
Right.
So they generally impart like ethical and moral lessons, values, that kind of stuff. They teach certain ways of acting and that kind of stuff. Yeah. So institutions actually play a very important role in everyone's life, and you as an individual are molded, shaped, whatever you want to use, by these institutions. Yes. But in the case of Yofukashi, we can see the absence of these institutions in the lives of the main cast, with the main one being the family, of course. So throughout the anime, we are never introduced to any of the families of the main cast. Yeah, I think you remember.
I'm well aware of that. Ko's mother is always absent.
Yeah, Ko's family is always absent. The Akira's family is also never mentioned.
Yep.
I think Mahiru's family was mentioned to be a florist, but they never really delve into that.
And Nazuna's family is only in the Dwayne Johnson sense.
Yes.
That kind of family.
Yes, that kind of family. We don't even know if it exists.
Or is it a Vin Diesel sense?
Who
yeah.
knows?
Fast and Furious sense.
But in any case, due to the lack of this familiar institution, the main cast, excluding the vampires of course, are thus able to roam the night, having the freedom to do so. Ironically, this freedom to act as they please also results in their aimlessness. So Ko's not knowing of what to do in the future is a sign of this aimlessness.
As well as Akira's like waking up super early to walk to school.
I think they
that,
never
like,
really
3-hour
did.
block.
They never really did explain that part, but yeah, in the sense, yes, there's no restrictions.
Was it not like a case of insomnia, and then like not say insomnia, but she woke up really early because she couldn't sleep much, or she slept in the daytime.
There was a recent occurrence that she couldn't sleep at night, but it wasn't really delved into by the anime because she never really got an arc, and
content adaptation.
Even in the anime also, the manga also never really got an arc, but that's besides the point. So this freedom that they have is also compounded by the fact that their behavior of roaming the streets at night is not penalized. Punished.
Yes.
So we can see that while Ko and Akira were informed that they should sleep at night to get used to a regular sleep cycle, there is no enforcement of this suggestion, so to speak. So in addition to their behaviors their behaviors are also encouraged by their peers, who together with them enjoy the time doing things that would otherwise be deemed as deviant by society.
Wait, what would be deemed deviant? I think I have a very different perspective of what is deviant.
Well, hitting up the arcade at like 3 a.m.,
I'll be more surprised that there are actually arcades open, but that's Japan. This is Singapore.
Yeah, this is Singapore. You don't really see that kind of stuff, but that's besides the point. Other things like the massage parlor.
Massage parlor.
Massage. Well,
services.
the part-time work that Ko engages with. Yeah.
Was that literally not only once?
I think it was brought up a few times, but
Like Ko did it once, but
Yes,
it's
Ko did it
Nazuna's
once.
job essentially.
Yeah, but he engaged in it. Other forms of deviance include standing in the middle of the street, that kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't really get penalized or punished for doing these activities that would otherwise be deemed as deviant by society.
Wait, but thematically isn't the main deviant behavior just exploring the night, and then anything that stems outwards from that is because of Nazuna's goading? Yeah.
Well, essentially you could say that just spending time up at night would be considered a deviant behavior in and of itself.
Wait, why would it?
Well, the nighttime is usually meant for rest, for society to continue functioning during the day, with
What if
most of
people
the
can't
functions.
rest at night and they're geared to resting in the afternoon?
Well, society has certain expectations of people that they rest at night and be functioning
contribute.
contributing members of society during the day.
So this would say be a normative behavior.
Yes.
Where one is asleep at night and awake in the morning, but it disregards the outlier behavior that some people just can't sleep at night, but they sleep in the day, or rather, there's also like night shift workers who.
Yes,
operate
unfortunately, that's how society has framed day and night. So
No, but with that said, right,
Mhm.
it's even logical to punish such deviant behavior if there's no consequence
well,
to the action.
to be fair, perhaps punishment may be a bit harsh maybe a bit tough to rationalize, because you need night shift workers to maintain some level of functioning of society during the night.
Or
considering
rather consider this, is there let's not use punish as it's too clear cut,
Mhm.
is it? Let's use penalize. So should someone suffer a demerit in that case, would it be logical to penalize individuals for simple behaviors without consequence, like just walking around at like 1 a.m.?
Well, unfortunately for certain members of society, mainly the youths, the functions that they are supposed to contribute to society, mainly being students learning in the education system and training to become functional adults in society, these have only been provided during the waking hours, so only during the day, and that's how society has decided that it should work out. So they have to force youths into following the schedule of society, and so punishment is a way of ensuring that they follow this schedule. it does relate later into how most of the functions of society are carried out during the day, but that's beside the point. It is safe to say that certain functions have been deemed to be suited for daytime, and that's why society has attempted to
one-dimensionally enforce this.
It has attempted to force individuals into following such a schedule.
Then with that said, right, with regards to such deviant behaviors, how is it that institutions will be responsible for the penalization of such deviant actions?
Well, you see, the institution itself may not be responsible. Well, there are certain responsibilities, of course, but each institution functions as an organ, and sometimes you will leave the enforcement of the rules to another institution. But of course, within the institutions itself, there are also certain ways that they may enforce these expectations. So usually in the family, you expect certain levels of curfew for youths below a certain age.
Seems reasonable.
They have some self-regulating methods, but usually there are also other ways of regulating the behaviors of individuals by other institutions. So there are different levels of it. But each institution has their own way, and if one institution fails to enforce it, other institutions will have to step in, and if everything fails, we end up with Go.
Right. Is what if I have two things to ask then. So the first is, what if the penalization results in a meaningless outcome? As in, the penalization does not result in a change to conformative behaviors to the societal norms, and the deviant behavior continues despite punishment. Rather than unpunished, it is now punished, but the enforcement does absolutely nothing.
Yes, there are certain... Okay, so this really delves into a different conversation, specifically about how deviance is recognized and how it functions how it really functions in society. So its purpose in society. So this is a lot of sidetracking. So let me just try to...
We have time. The audience has time.
Try to summarize it in general. So there are two levels of deviance. First is the act, and second is the labeling. So one could carry out a deviant act, but if they are never labeled as a deviant, then their behavior is considered unrecognized, and they are thus not penalized for this behavior.
Seems reasonable.
So this is the angle that you are taking, I guess.
Yeah, it's the angle where society does not perceive the behavior as deviant, and thus it's unpunished.
So in such a case, without the recognition of the deviant behavior and not punishing the deviant behavior, then you can't really get a regulation of the behavior. I guess it depends on the behavior as well. I mean, if to an extent the behavior is not detrimental to society in and of itself, then there's no real need to regulate it that much. But any form of deviant behavior should, in a sense, violate, how do I put it, offend the collective consciousness. So this collective consciousness is different from the Marxist collective consciousness, in that this collective consciousness is more a consensus of what is acceptable by society and what should be followed in terms of morality and behavior. So if society does not recognize this behavior as offending the collective consciousness, then it is not something that they will really enforce, that kind of stuff. So yeah, if you get my drift.
I think I kind of get your drift.
So some behaviors, if the person performing the behavior has more value to society than what would be
normative.
Yeah. Then they wouldn't really get penalized for these behaviors.
It'll be recognized, but it won't be penalized.
Well, recognition is also one thing. If no one sees it, then is it really wrong? That kind of stuff. But yeah.
The second is more of what happens with change, or the idea of change as applied to deviant behavior. What if behavior that is perceived as deviant is changed to become very normative? So for example, if you are just a teenager and it has become normative for you to stay up late.
Yes, that is a different topic in and of itself, because there is the traditional functionalist perspective, and then there's also postmodernism, which rejects every major large scale attempt to explain behaviors, and that's besides the point entirely. So you can see that the discussion of functionalism is very complex.
Rather, so is it more due to the fact that it's about perspectives and ways of thinking rather than it being an actual it's not very concrete?
Well, I mean, sociology was never very concrete. I don't presume that people studying sociology would say that any theory is very concrete, but in a sense,
it'll be contextual.
Yeah, it is really based on the society that you find yourself in. So in one sense, if staying up late is normalized, then it's just an indication that society has adapted to a new normal, rather than it remaining deviant behavior. Because you have to understand that as time changes, society has to adapt to the times.
Makes sense, perfect sense.
Right. So
otherwise you'll be left to the dust and you'll rot.
And that's kind of one of the parts that we'll be touching on later, I think, which is about how society has to adapt and how deviance is able to bring about change. I may have to wing that. But in any case, yes, let's get back onto topic.
Yes, back to Yofukashi no Uta.
Yes, so in Yofukashi no Uta, the behaviors by Ko and Akari were never really...
Akari?
Akira.
Yo!
Sorry, a lot of... I think the whiskey is working its magic.
Right.
Yeah, but in any case, they were never really labeled as deviants, not really punished for it.
Yes, neither. I don't think they were recognized, and they were definitely not punished.
Yes.
Anyway.
And thus they were able to continue their nightly escapades. So...
Wouldn't escapade be more applicable to Ko, whereas for Akira it's more like... her behavior could be seen as positive in the sense that you're an early worker and the early bird gets the worm, whereas Ko would be delinquency, where you stay out late at night and engage in delinquent behavior.
I mean, the moment that Akira engaged, failed to attend school on time, she slept in, you could consider that as some level of deviant behavior.
So definitely within the institution of education.
Some level of nightly escapade. Her joining Ko and Nazuna for coffee, beer, could be considered some level of nightly escapade.
Right.
But beyond that, so beyond just the peer pressure as well, there exists a couple of other explanations for the actions of the main cast. So this is mainly for Ko and Mahiru. So Mahiru is in the manga.
Right, which I've not read,
yes.
Unfortunately.
I will not try to delve too deeply into his arc because it's still continuing. So I have no idea what will be the outcome of it. But such explanations include those of Merton's strain theory about the attainment of goals and the availability of the means to do so, as well as the idea of role fulfillment, which is whether one is recognized, whether
one attains recognition for the role that they have performed.
Exactly, yes. So, each of these arcs is really quite a deep dive. I mean, we have already attempted to explore, deviance besides Yofukashi, but I think this will take a bit too much time, and for the sake of time, perhaps if you're interested, you could take a look into it, like strain theory and role performance, but I shan't go into that too much.
Don't say that. We have a lot of time. We're not wasting the time of our audience.
I think
you waste your life.
There are more pertinent things to discuss with regards to the foundational functionalist theory.
Right.
Yes,
so
because not everyone is versed in functionalist theory.
Then shall we get to it?
Yes. So just as how I have mentioned, what I mentioned above provides an explanation for why our cast begins their foray into the night. It also works to explain how they interact with each other and essentially form their own little subculture. So you can agree that humans require certain levels of structure in their life.
Agreed.
And the subcultures that they join must agree with their own values. So the values of the subculture click with their own values. And
sounds about right. Otherwise, they wouldn't stay within the subculture. They would seek to either remove themselves or remove the subculture.
Exactly, because in the first place, their deviant behaviors have dissociated from the values of the regular society.
The main culture.
Yes, exactly. And that's why they developed the subculture. So, yes. This is why we see the main cast start to come together, forming some semblance of a society that has its own set of rules by which they abide by, albeit rather loosely.
It's more like a friend clique in the form of their own micro society, right?
Yes.
If we were to think about it that way.
Yes, to put it simply. So while I have explained about why our cast has embraced the darkness, the explanations remain rather micro level. Do you not agree?
I do think there is rather micro level.
Yes.
Yeah. We need to go slightly more meta to more macro.
Yeah, so the real idea behind functionalism is that it provides a macro perspective to how society functions and why humans behave in a certain way. So this leads me to the main point of this episode, that instances of deviance should not be studied in isolation, but as part of a larger picture.
Do you have an example of deviance in a very isolated study?
So the best example, the one that is most often cited, would be Emil Durkheim's study of suicide. Yes.
Okay.
So suicide, as you know, is a very personal affair, so to speak. But there are trends in society with like suicide levels increasing during certain periods and suicide levels not being as high during other periods.
Periods of, I presume, from a very psychological point of view, that stress would be a implicator or a variant.
You would be right, but we are doing a sociological perspective over here.
Right.
Yes. So the instances of suicide in Durkheim's study was attempting to explain why there was a spike in suicides during the industrializing period.
Okay.
So this was attributed to anomie, which is what happened when
excessive
society,
freedoms.
not beyond excessive freedoms, because society was not able to adapt and therefore establish rules to govern the new environment in which it found itself, the industrialized society. So people do not know what they needed to be, how they needed to act, and therefore this resulted in what Durkheim coined as anomie suicide, with the other forms being you can go read about it. There are other forms such as suicide when there is too much restrictions, suicide when one is too detached from society beyond. But that's a totally different tangent then.
Yeah, I see many causative reasons, but okay, so this is a study of the deviant behavior of suicide in isolation.
Yes.
So how can we look at it?
Deviant suicide as a social phenomenon, as a social fact, that there is an increase in suicide.
Is the deviant part of it the fact that the causative reason is anomie?
Essentially, yes. So suicide itself is considered a deviant behavior, but we can link the deviant behavior to certain trends in society. So if we were to take a look at Yofukashi, we can see that there are many different experiences that are being portrayed in Yofukashi. So for example, Ko, his experience is very different compared to Akira, Nazuna and Mahiru, right?
Yes.
The specific circumstances are very different. So
what makes them more common?
Yes.
That when they form their own little group.
So while you can see that Ko's is about his inability to understand Akira's being that.
I do recall some part where he says that the man himself is too young to understand the intricacies of love.
No, beyond that, he doesn't even know what friends are. How do you define a friend?
Damn, semantics are really hard.
Yes, exactly. But that's what institutions are supposed to provide. The definitions of these more floaty, fluffy topics.
Yeah,
But, you know,
to make it normative.
Yeah. In Akira's Akira. Yes. In Akira's case, it's about what it means to be a student and what it means to be a friend as well. In Nazuna, it's about what it means to be a person
Lover.
of the night.
Oh.
Or a lover, yes. But there's a commonality between these characters, which is specifically the lack of the presence of family in their lives.
The institution that we were talking about.
Yes. Well, others include the disconnect in their values from the norms, and to name a few. So this indicates that a problem exists beyond the individual. So specifically, the deviant behavior, which is night roaming, is an occurrence that happens among individuals that have different experiences from each other, but all share the commonality, which is roaming the night. So we could understand this as a social trend that is beyond the individual. Why are people exploring the night rather than sleeping in? This is not something that is merely individual, it's a trend in society. So
Agreed.
we must understand this trend beyond the individual implications of it.
A more societal.
Yes, a more societal explanation for why there is an increasing trend in the number of people roaming the night.
If I could say it, I think it's not just it. It can be viewed in many ways. It's definitely not just sociological in nature, but within the topic of Yofukashi, let's stick to our fundamentalist take. So, what is the fundamentalist sociological take on this deviant behavior?
Yes, so for Yofukashi specifically, my take is that there is a failure of the institution of the family that leads to the increase in night roaming. So this is the commonality that we see between the main characters, and that is why
neglect.
yes. So this is the commonality, and because this is the commonality, we have to give certain levels of we have to assume that this has some importance to why there is an increase, right?
Yes.
So in essence, we can understand Yofukashi as more of a social commentary piece on the level of Psychopaths and Code Geass, commenting about how the institution of family plays a significant role in how individuals behave and their values and their...
Hold up. Doesn't Psychopaths have no families, and whereas in Code Geass, Lelouch is a ciscon?
Well, not into the... the similarities don't really go into the specifics of family itself, but how institutions have failed to regulate
yes.
behavior. Yes. So, we can see the similarities in the way the story is told in the series Mawaru Penguin Drum.
Hold up. I heard penguin. That's all I heard.
Yes, no worries. It is a series that is also considered a very good piece of social commentary.
Okay.
I don't think it's really up your alley because it's more like
Yeah, I think I
dark
need
as
some
shit.
shonen water. I mean, I do read a lot of dark as shit stuff, but shonen really greases my gears.
See, this is not. It doesn't really have shonen. It's like more psychological. It's. I wouldn't say it's more monster. It's more Shinsekai Yori level of. Yeah, that kind of social commentary kind of anime. So yeah, it is not something that you'll be too familiar with.
I think I prefer to not have some manner of social commentary within my mindless beating of other people up.
Well, I mean, in those anime, there's also social commentary, but it's not as specific. In any case,
Yes.
In the series Mawaru Penguin Drum, The cast also experiences a disconnect between their experiences and the values of the greater society. So this leads to their eventual descent into deviance.
You have like an example for both parts. Like, so first the disconnect with the experience and the values of greater society. Like, what's the experience and what's the greater society in this case?
Right. So in the case of Maoru Penguin Drum, there is this character. I can't remember the name specifically.
That's fine.
So his role in society is that of a model student.
Okay.
So expectations of
Relatable.
him, yeah. So the common expectations of him being a model student, but then again, he experiences the disconnect between the ability to perform this role and the recognition of his performance of this role. So what you would expect is that if you are a model student, you get certain levels of recognition for being a model student, so praise, love from your family, that kind of stuff. But in the case of this model student, he felt that it was more an iron cage. He felt trapped by this expectation of him being a model student in such a way that he adopted deviant behaviors that allow him to escape the expectations of him being a model student.
So he expected to be lauded for his participation or his actions as a model student, which he failed to be provided, and it's the expectation of the model student is provided by greater society.
And thus he decided to escape to deviant behavior in order to earn recognition.
I won't say exactly that is his expectations of the praise that comes with being a model student, more so that the role of a model student requires certain levels of recognition that the individual is a model student. Without this recognition, the individual cannot perceive their role.
Oh yeah, they lose sight of
Yes.
what they're supposed to be.
They cannot really conceptualize themselves as being a model student because there
They're
is a
not
disconnect.
told they are.
Yeah, they are never worthy enough. I'm sorry, mom. But yes, so there is this disconnect between the expectations of society and the reality, and so this disconnect leads them to perform deviant actions, which
In this case, it would be
I can't really remember the specifics, but it has something to do with kidnapping, I think.
This just took a very interesting turn.
Yes, it is a very dark anime,
Okay.
but you can see how the disconnect leads to deviant behavior
Yes.
in terms of recognition. Beyond recognition, there are other factors, but yeah. So their experiences are not so much a result of merely their own choice. No one really desires to be a deviant for the sake of being a deviant, but also the result of social circumstances that have forced them into such choices. So in Cole's case, he didn't really want to roam the night. It's just that he didn't really have another option to explore, to understand his circumstances.
A boy just one day found out that he can't sleep.
Yeah.
What do you do, man?
What you gonna do? Society doesn't really
what you
give
gotta
you
do,
an answer
man?
to this.
You gotta find the answer yourself, and the answer may not involve your right or left arm.
Exactly. So this provides a more macro perspective to deviancy. It is not merely about the individual, merely about their choices, but it's also about the society that they exist in. So when deviancy becomes rampant, so in the case of Yofukashi, the night roaming, such a significant portion of society engaging in such a behavior would reflect a society in which such behaviors become necessary in a sense. So
the necessity of deviant behaviors. Did I just hear that right?
kind of is in a sense that
Okay, yin and yang.
yeah, when society fails to regulate and gives reasons for regular behaviors,
Normative
people
behaviors.
people deviate to deviant behaviors to understand their role in society, kind of. Yeah, so failure of society. Man, I'm not really getting this through very well. Is probably just the alcohol.
Is it the idea that as long as we're keeping everything to a very sociological take
Mhm.
or in a very sociological context, aka society. So society and its institutions has a very straightforward norm, as
Mhm.
well as its intended role for an individual.
Mm-hmm.
And if an individual fails to receive the necessary recognition for said role, they then resort to deviant behaviors in order to resolve their lack of identity.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is-
I think that's
That is a very well put together summary of what I've been trying to.
yeah, I think
insinuate,
you failed to
yes.
poison me the Jim Beam, but hey, it's fine.
Yes, no worries. I poisoned myself. Oh no.
Oh my, anathema.
So yeah, is apparent in the example of Yofukashi that the interdependency of institutions in our society, such as the failure of the family leading to the school.
Yes,
Institution.
failure within education, then failure within other aspects
Yeah.
of society.
So yeah, it is clear that one failure leads to another failure, and just as how if one organ in the body fails, it leads to multiple complications, situated not just in that organ specifically.
Let's say we meander a bit further because you know that I am the exercise guy here, right?
Yeah.
So anatomy. Let's say it would, if we are going to stick to this organ analogy, then would there be a case whereby one institution holds favor or its suffering results in greater consequence? For example, let's say there's an institution equal to the heart or the brain. You know that if the brain fails or if the heart fails, death is soon to follow. Whereas if let's say you lose one kidney, you can always chop it out and replace it. Just get a new one. Just pay $250,000 again. But your heart, if you just sheer heart attack and you just die down there, what happens?
I mean, I don't think there is a really that central of a institution that if it fails will lead to absolute anarchy, but some institutions are definitely more important than others. So if there is a good education and family institution, there will not be as much of a need for enforcement of laws, the justice system. If you have equal opportunities for everyone, there's not really a need to regulate deviant behaviors because everyone would be able to
Do what they
attain
want.
the roles that are expected of them. So I don't think there's any institution as important as the heart, but there are some that are more important than others. Like there are institutions that could be considered equal to the level of the liver compared to like some that are considered the appendix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, so you're saying, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like there's an implication that you perceive that there is a institution with equivalent value to the appendix, aka is worthless. Sharing a little.
Well, let's not go into too much.
Yeah, you just drop a hint for the viewers out there.
Yeah, there's no real need for things like capitalism or meritocracy.
But then what would push people to work harder?
Yeah, see, that's a whole different topic entirely. There's studies about how, universal basic incomes don't really decrease productivity, actually increases it. How people don't stop working just because they get enough money to survive, baseline survive. There are things beyond just surviving. I'm sure you would know.
I wouldn't know, but I feel like everything is contextually dependent. There'll be some places that already have universal basic income and
No,
they would
there-
observe this.
There are none.
They're not really.
There are none.
Seems like an ideal pipe dream then.
Yes,
Right.
it is an ideal pipe dream that certain institutions of society that have attempted to play down, but that's an entirely different perspective. That is more towards the conflict side of things. But yeah, so in Yofukashi, we can see the interplay of many different institutions and their roles in influencing the actions of the characters, their deviant behaviors. So instead of understanding of Yofukashi as merely slice of life romance,
Wait, you sure it's not a fighting manga? You know, I think I recall some good animation there.
I mean, there are some, fight scenes, but beyond that, it's more about how certain institutions have failed in the lives of these individuals, which leads them to roaming the night, so to speak. Yeah, so I think that's a very I guess I've been beating around the bush, but that's kind of a good summary for what I think one should understand Yofukashi as the anime, not so much just
which is
another slice of life.
The failure of a institution has resulted in said behavior of night walking.
Yeah, leading to the behavior of night walking.
Or is it more like there's a deeper trend whereby you're hinting at there's gradual familial neglect which is leading to greater deviant behavior, of which the night walking is just the start?
I mean, that I would leave that up to you for your own interpretation. There's many different interpretations for that. But yeah.
I think within the scope of functionalism, Yofukashi is... I don't think we need to necessarily politicize it in the sense that we need to draw meaning or we need to analyze it within the scope of a sociological concept. It's more like it is a good reflection of what is actually happening in reality, which is there are changes in trends and there are changes in normative behavior, and that how we perceive this behavior by the audience will also be reflective of deviant behaviors that we have ourselves.
To be fair, I think a very popular perspective, I won't say popular, but a more common perspective would be more focused on the individual experiences, so a more psychological understanding of it, because that's how most stories in anime are done, focusing on individual experiences and stories, because that's what is interesting about anime.
I would love to see things with myself as the protagonist.
Yeah, but
and maybe I already do that. You never know.
We got to go beyond the individual. There are some things that take a sociological perspective.
Yeah, I think
to understand.
I think sometimes there is a strong need to view things within a societal scope instead of just the individual, because there are consequences if you neglect that scope. We can't just exercise excessive individualism like you have said in Durkheim's perspective. Yeah.
Well, see, this is I think that this is a really good reflection of our current society, which focuses a lot on individualism. So there is this paper done by a very, I won't say renowned. He's a professor at NUS, National University of Singapore, who has done a study on environmentalism, which focuses on how modern society places a lot of responsibility on the individual when it's not really the individual's responsibility. It's more society's fault that we have come to this point. But we've got to move beyond the perspective of the individual, because that's what society has been attempting to impart onto us, that the individual is entirely responsible for their own experiences, that they are solely responsible for their own station in life, when truth be told, there are many different factors that lead to a person's station in life. So I think it's very important that we bring up this alternative perspective, whereby we mention the importance in which the institutions, different parts of society play into a person's experience, because man is not an island. No man is an island.
Yep, we are just individual men. But with that said, speaking of alternative views, shall we get to our own alternative views of the Jim Beam, and let's try our first new format of mixers.
Exactly. Yes, let us.
Alright.
Let us get it out of the freezer. Holy shit.
So, Ben, I see that you are very, very terrible at estimating.
Yes, I may have a problem with depth perception.
Alright, so shall we try and get that problem sorted out by making you get knocked out instead?
Yeah,
So-
I think that would be a good idea.
So we have, starting from the left, we have soda water. Then in the center, we have Coke, as evidenced by the very clearly different color. And then on the far right, we have Ben's almost spilling cup, and that's ginger ale.
Yes, yes we do.
Alright, shall we start with our classic Coke first?
Yes,
Okay.
I think that would be a good idea.
Alright, so let's start with the Coke. So this would be Jim Beam with Coke. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Strongly reminiscent of Jack Daniels and Coke.
Yeah, it has a very slightly bitter aftertaste.
That's 100% on you. That's because you added too much Jim Beam to yours.
Perhaps, maybe I should add more Coke.
Yeah, yours is more Jim Beam than Coke. For me, I think it tastes very similar. Slight nutty flavor at the end, but otherwise, cokey, whiskey.
Yeah, now it's cokey nutty whiskey.
Yep. As with society, I think balance is important, especially with the amount of alcohol and mixer you use. Otherwise, you're just gonna screw the taste.
Well, some level of deviation from the standard is not too bad.
Well, yin and yang. Right, so shall we get to the next one? So this is the first one.
Yes.
It's gonna be tonic,
Soda
soda water.
Not
So
tonic
this will be
water.
something new. Right, cheers, me.
Yes.
Looks like piss.
I mean, it's in a tiger cup. So
Actually, it just looks like Glen Grant, but alright, cheers, mate.
yeah, it's fine. It's tiger. Looks like tiger. Hopefully, it doesn't taste like tiger.
Now it just tastes like bitter Jim Beam.
Yeah,
This was a mistake.
this was a mistake. I was hoping that because it's a bourbon, the sweetness would slightly compensate for the bitterness of soda water, but
Next time, let's just spike the whiskeys with honey. Everything would taste like a Kyushu cowboy. No way.
I mean, there is a honey Jim Beam.
That is very true.
Maybe that would be considered for the future episode.
Future episode.
It's cheap swill as well.
You just call it cheap swill.
Isn't it not?
I'm not gonna dispute that.
Yeah, it's just bitter Jim Beam.
Yeah.
Let's hope I'll be able to walk home.
Walk. Were we planning to do a second episode after this?
I don't think so. I don't think I'll be able to respond to you properly.
Right. Then it will be my rant. But with that said, how about we try the third one, which is gonna be ginger ale.
Yeah, gonna see
This hardly looks different from the soda water one, but I can see that your cup is about to explode.
Yeah, surface tension and whatnot.
Alright, just me.
Hopefully it tastes better than the soda water, cause ginger ale has.
Hey,
some-
ginger ale tastes good, man.
Yeah, there's some taste to ginger ale.
This smells like ginger ale.
Mhm. Sweet Jim Beam.
Alcoholic ginger ale.
Actually, not bad.
Yeah, I think ginger ale is the best.
Yeah,
Were
definitely.
we using the wrong mixer all along?
Probably.
Yes, that's it. Should we just start finding a ginger ale sponsor?
I mean, I think we should get more, like just a whole range of mixers.
But Ben, with the amount that you poured for your own drinks, you're never gonna. That's like drinking 6 shots in one night, and that's just for one episode.
Survivable, probably.
Yeah, but it's not meant to be like a Call of Duty mission, right? It just says they survive. Or it's not meant to be like the Halo Reach finales. Just survive.
Hey, don't worry. My thoughts are always this disorganized anyway, so not much difference.
That's why we follow a script.
Exactly. But in any case, I think ginger ale is quite good on.
I think ginger ale gives the kick that Coke does not provide.
Yes. Surprisingly, I thought the sweetness of the Coke would be able to match this whiskey because, the sweetness is a bit lacking for this bourbon specifically. But surprisingly, ginger ale fits well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why.
It's just sweeter Jim Beam or it's just alcoholic ginger ale.
Yeah, exactly.
With that said, let's get to our ratings. That's important.
Yes.
So, how would you rate this band?
I mean, I think it's a all rounder, you know, and just if you want to get something for a party with, you know, something that goes well with mixers, like Jim Beam would do just fine, you know.
It's a bit too nutty for my liking.
Ah.
I'll just give it a flat 7.
Yeah, a 7 is just about there.
It's nutty neat. It's nutty on the rocks with a mixer. I think the best one is just ginger ale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, a 7 does it justice. You know, not too. It's not bad.
But it ain't really good.
Yeah, it ain't really good.
It ain't really good.
All right, that
I think
rounds.
that
Yeah.
that wraps up our whiskey review for the Jim Beam bourbon.
Yes, and the first time we are using multiple mixers. All right.
So-
Yeah, I think the mixers have done their job.
I think we did, man.
Yeah, sounds about right. But you know, we still have to round up this episode.
Sure, Ben. So, what do you have to? What else could you possibly talk about functionalism?
Yeah, you know, through a couple of episodes on this channel talking about sociology, we have explored the different perspectives, conflict theory and symbolic interactionism. So with each of their own ideas of how society functions, you know, with conflict theory being about how society is constantly being in tension, while symbolic interactionism focuses mainly on agency rather than structural determinism, which is rather prevalent in conflict theory and functionalist theory. So the thing about this is that these three perspectives are the main perspectives of sociological theory, right? These are the fundamental theories that are taught to all the introductory courses.
So these are the three basic
Yes, essentially.
schools of thought.
Yes, essentially. So we are taught each of these perspectives, but you know they conflict with each other. So how do we make sense of these theories?
Actually, I have two questions regarding this. First,
Yes,
is there like a fourth school of thought, yo?
I mean, there are different schools of thought. These are the fundamental, like introductory, you know, the foundational perspectives that constitute sociology. There are more recent perspectives such as postmodernism. You know, there's a very complicated topic of its own. I'm sure you're aware.
Well, postmodernism, as far as I understand it, is a very brutalized topic by Jordan Peterson.
It is in and of itself a very complicated topic, rejecting most of the grand theories that are proposed by the foundational perspectives. So beyond that,
It feels
yeah.
like people who are postmodernists are very contrarian for the sake of being contrarian in itself.
I mean, not really for the sake of being contrarian itself, but the fact that most grand narratives do not really fit our modern experiences. So you know, the idea of conflict theory does not explain all of our experiences,
Understandably.
right? You know, that perspective, but in the sense that the foundational perspectives, the functionalist, the conflict, and the symbolic interactionist perspectives, how do we put them together? You know, how do we make sense of what, how do these theory perspectives interact with each other? You know, because each theory has its own flaws, but it also has its own
Truths.
truths. Yes.
Truths in observation.
Yes. So how do we make sense of society in terms of these perspectives? So my take towards these perspectives is that we should not take any one of them as the
To-
absolute truth.
Yeah, it's the one-turn truth.
Yeah. So these perspectives explain certain aspects of society, but they do not explain all of society. So
Agreed.
while one truth may hold true in one specific instance, so you know how functionalist theory explains deviance, we have to understand that the functionalist theory takes into you have to take into account how the functionalist theory takes for granted the fact that society is stable, that society has certain interests inherent within it.
You mean like very clearly defined institutions with clearly defined goals and outcomes that would be beneficial to the society?
Yes, exactly. So the fact that functionalist theory states that society is supposed to be stable hinges on the fact that there is a certain goal that society is supposed to attain.
Stability.
And this stability is for the sake of attaining a certain objective. So in the case of conflict theory, is the goal that the ruling class has stated as the goal of society, which is the maintenance of their power. So in the sense that functionalist theory meshes with conflict theory, we are able to use this multiple perspective to create a sort of mishmash of the multiple perspective into creating one that is able to explain our experiences without entirely how we put
I
this.
think would the right way to say it be that we are trying to create a framework for each and every society we observe using the theories, and then we will try and draw the links between each and every single theory with each and every instance of observation we make regarding the societal outcomes or observations.
In a sense, yes. So how I put it is that while none of these theories on their own are able to explain the entirety of society, each of them hold their truths, and it is necessary for us to mix them together to create some level of coherence to explain our current society. So while conflict theory does not explain how Singapore is able to maintain its hold on its citizens, if we are able to mix it with interactionist and functionalist theories, we would be able to come up with a better explanation than if we were to rely on conflict alone, because Singapore is not really a conflict-based society. There isn't really much. There is more on the level of acceptance, that kind of stuff.
So the principal message that we're trying to get across is that from our three basic foundational sociological concepts, like functionalism, conflict theory, and the last one which I've forgotten clearly, interactionism.
Yes,
we are using these theories as the basis of observations, such that we could get the besterest picture of what our societies, if we are caring to observe about it, like for example just Singapore, otherwise other societies, and then while there's still other theories that we can pull in to contribute to creating the besterest, highest resolution image for these societies, getting the best sociological understanding of all the interactions, all the social relationships.
Yes. So in a sense, that is the essential idea of it, because society is complicated. There is no one theory that explains entirely how society functions, because if we did have such a all-encompassing theory, then we wouldn't really need these multiple perspectives.
I agree.
The multiple perspectives, each in and of themselves, provide an explanation for specific instances, but they may not be able to explain the entirety of society. So if we take these specific instances and put them together, we will get a better idea of how society actually functions. So this is the idea behind sociology. We should not really take any specific theory as the truth, nothing but the truth, and the whole truth.
I agree.
I think I am mixed up that quotation. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I think it's more like we cannot take the snapshot of every individual's understanding as our basis of understanding. We have to pool our resources, aka the understandings of every individual observed across time, so that we can get the best understanding of our society, and thus how to tackle the problems that we observe from our current perspective.
I think rather than specific instances, understanding it through like the perspectives, it will be a better summary if we were to say that these multiple perspectives culminate in the actual society that we live in. So it is not so much the experiences rather than the ideas behind these experiences that really come together to explain the society that we live in. I think I may have lost you because I have actually lost myself thanks to the extra shots that I may have added into the mixers.
Well, this
Yeah.
gratuitous act of self-sabotage aside, how are we going to wrap up this episode? So far, we have talked about Yofukashi no Uta in a very functionalist sociological view. We have examined how the characters interact with each other within their own subcultures of understandings. We have talked about how the characters in Yofukashi no Uta engage in what would be perceived as deviant behaviors within the norms of the societies that the author has written out. So what is the grand conclusion to all this?
I think the best way to explain this combination of the different perspectives would be through the experience of the individual who selected the massage option in the Nazuna's resume.
So
resume.
that one person who
That one
works
person.
really late and because of probably working in a black company.
Yeah, her experiences with the black company. So, in the sense that a functionalist perspective may not be able to entirely explain her experiences, because the function of the institution of work may not be, well, it assumes it has certain levels of assumption behind that. The institution of work itself has certain objectives that it aims to achieve.
Agreed.
So how the black organization company.
It's more like we have generic work, and then we have work that is very what we could tout as unsavory. For example, work that a yakuza would do, or work that gangsters would do. But no matter what, it's work that still somehow pushes on the economy towards a more forward direction rather than a backward direction.
I think it's beyond that, like the distinction between the unrecognized and the recognized, or the dark, like the black society and the overground society, is more so that the assumption of the functionalist perspective is that the objective of society is something that is wholesome, something that benefits everyone. So the idea that society continues to perpetuate itself is for the sake of everyone in the society.
The benefit of everyone.
Yes. However, the side that we are shown in that scene alone is that the objective of society in this case is more so to the benefit of those in the ruling class. So the boss, well, working overtime, working at that late a time doesn't really benefit the worker.
It doesn't benefit the worker.
Yeah, exactly. It's not something that the worker should be expected to do for the sake of their own benefit. Their labor itself.
Is it not an issue of wages then?
I mean, beyond that, the labor that a worker provides should be just the bare minimum to achieve the production of a certain good. But if you were to expect a worker to work overtime without additional pay and whatnot, neglecting certain aspects of their lives, that alone is indicative of a society that is exploitative, something that expects a worker to work not for the sake of their own benefit, but to the sake of the benefit of the ruling class. So those who control the means of the production, so the boss specifically.
We then have two things to add. The first is that would this not first consider the work structure? So what the work that is input by the worker results, that means the output. For example, let's say if a worker could produce let's say the input by a worker who does manual labor is clearly not equivalent to the input of work that is by a worker who does something that is purely digital. Would you not agree?
I think that the alcohol is influencing your thought processes, but I think the idea I'm trying to get at behind this discussion is that the idea of social stability is that there is a certain objective behind this social stability, right? So
Insofar as is social stability not limited to who desires it?
in a sense, yes. So there is a certain, so in every society there is an objective that they are trying to achieve. In this case is the objective of enhancing the benefits of the ruling class. So in that sense, the conflict theory actually plays a part in explaining this functionalist theory, in that it provides a perspective to frame the functionalist perspective, in that the functionalist perspective is only valid insofar as it explains why workers work towards a certain goal. Like it only explains why workers have certain problems such as like overtime and dissociation from the norm, in a sense that society has a certain goal it is trying to achieve, and that the objectives of the individuals within these societies deviate from the goals of the society. So deviance in that sense is more so a deviation from the objective of society and the goals of the individual. So conflict theory provides us a way of understanding functionalist theory in why there is a sort of deviance from the norm.
Alright, let's take a step back.
Yeah.
Let's take a step back.
I think I've lost.
Okay,
My
so
train of
the
thought.
point I was trying to get at with regards to, we're not considering the type of work that is done when we're talking about functionalism,
Mhm.
are we? For
Yeah.
example, we know that work is not simply in a relationship of boss and worker.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just pure agents, and then it would be with their multiple contracted bosses,
Mm-hmm.
rather than just what we would typically associate with a office worker, which is boss and worker. For example, I relate to the feeling of having multiple bosses because I work in personal training. So I work for multiple people. I don't just work for one boss. So I work for multiple bosses. So this is an example of that I would speak otherwise, because my outcomes don't result in a societal benefit. It's not in a very linear way. Let's say if my work outcomes is that my boss, the person who contracted me, becomes fitter, then would their productivity necessarily increase? Let's say if it does increase, then that might mean a direct result in that their work performance, because them as my boss, they could be a worker themselves for another boss, so they could increase their output. So we have to account for the multiple different kinds of roles that workers play if we're going to view it in a very macro perspective when it comes to functionalism. Wouldn't that be the case? So what I was trying to bring up was that the type of work would be a confounder in this.
I think more so than what the actual work that the worker performs is more the idea that, you know,
because
you are forced into this role of the instructor that has to consider educating multiple clients that results in the, more so than educating the clients themselves, the objective of your work will be to earn a living.
That would be the objective of any person's work.
So the conflict between this and the objective of your work as being purely for the sake of the clients is that you are working for profit. So there is
Always.
this disconnect between the objective of the work itself and the overarching idea that you have to work for subsistence in the current society.
No, it's the fact not that my work is definitely for the sake of subsistence, right? But it's not like I have a grander outcome than just providing the clients what they want, which is for example, it could be just coaching for the sake of making them fitter, or it could be say of providing them a program that makes them fitter. Like it's very disconnected from a grander scheme of things. It's just like I'm just providing a service. The service has no grander meaning beyond just the client themselves, unless we're trying to extrapolate beyond that.
Yeah, that is essentially the idea behind the conflict theory, in that your work itself has a greater goal of being the source of your subsistence rather than being for the sake of the client's goal. So you would provide
that I have a monetary objective rather than a more purer.
Yes. So it's like I wouldn't presume that you yourself carry out these kind of practices, but some do attempt to extend their guidance of their clients so that they are able to gain
financial objectives.
Yes. So in the sense that conflict theory does describe how functionalist theory functions in our current society, we should not discount any specific theory in their relevance to any specific experience. Rather, we should consider multiple perspectives as contributing to our current experience. So that is essentially the idea behind how we should take the multiple different perspectives that are taught in sociology. So rather than, holding fast to one specific theory, such
for example, just being a fetishist of the conflict theory, or just being a fetishist of the functionalism theory.
Exactly. So, conflict theory does not in itself explain all aspects of society. We require certain aspects of functionalist theory and interactionist theory to be able to create a holistic explanation for certain experiences that we encounter in our lives. So, it is important that we take a more holistic, multi-perspective approach to experiences rather than just to accept that or
just one-dimensionally think about it along the lines of one theory and then like make it our sole understanding.
Yeah, to force it into a certain perspective because bias.
Then Ben, perhaps to like wrap up this entire topic, I have kind of like a grand question to ask. It's more along the lines of so what is the point of us incorporating such sociological thinking as a generic audience, as a generic person? So to our audience who perhaps just view this podcast for the sake of fun, to just like drown out their lives with our voices, or for like individuals like myself who really couldn't be asked beyond more than financial as well as self-satisfactory reasons for doing my work.
I do understand your question. It's like there are some people who just listen to our voices just because it's soothing and it puts them to sleep.
I hope so.
But yeah, so the purpose behind this multi-perspective perspective that I propose that we should take is that any individual perspective that we have been taught to take up, the individualistic idea behind the neoliberal ideology that we have been accustomed to think about, we should really consider how we should consider these attempts to explain experiences in one theory alone.
Understandings.
Yeah, we need to take into account that our one theory alone may not be able to engage the entirety of the complexity of our situation.
I agree. Is perhaps a better way to word it would be that one theory alone is insufficient to explain the grand understanding behind a phenomenon that we experience.
Yes, exactly. And the idea is that their interest behind us understanding experiences in a certain perspective. So, from the idea of neoliberalism, there is the interest of us understanding society through a neoliberal perspective, the individualization of our actions, the making responsibility entirely on the individual, that distorts our perspectives. It distorts our understanding of the experience of individuals within our society.
Yeah, it's more along the lines of like it's some, I would say there is some form of guided manipulation that is intended to limit your perspective on something.
There is an
so that
ideological
you fail to perceive the other perspectives.
Yes, there is an interest by those in charge to limit our ideological understanding of certain phenomena towards the advantage of these interest groups. So rather than basing our understanding entirely off one theory that we are accustomed to, we should really consider how, certain assumptions have been made by these specific theories. So, functionalist theories assumes that the institutions function towards objective that is for the benefit of the entire society. Rather, conflict theory poses this assumption as a problem because society is not exactly for the benefit of everyone. Rather it is for the benefit of those that are in charge.
Okay, so if I could perhaps do first a very quick throwback to our gambling episode.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the information warfare that we would see in a gambling scenario. So we should always seek to endeavor to obtain more information. In this case, it would be by learning how to see via more perspectives or to analyze via more perspectives, whereas we are operating against possibly individuals who or institutions or organizations who seek to limit our information that we are receiving. And then the next thing would be that using this information, we will seek to obtain better benefits for firstly, or maybe not just ourselves, but as well as the larger society as we see it, insofar as our motivations towards benefiting that society goes.
I think that's a very apt summary of what I've been trying to say, because alcohol really does dull the ability to
then
express.
So in order to wrap up this episode, Ben, how would you, perhaps to the audience, as we seem to be, as between the two of us, I would say that we seem to be the more cognizant individuals, let's say taking the knowledge from whatever we've talked about over the past few episodes so that we could perhaps goad them into watching it, what kind of realizations or what kind of takeaways could they possibly have based on gaining more understanding of sociology, of being more aware of the larger societies that they are in? For example, within Singapore, what could they notice within the current society that would benefit them? Or rather, the key question here is, what takeaways do they have?
Well, I think the best way to summarize what the idea behind sociology is to adopt the position, the role of a practical skeptic. So do not accept ideas as they are
just shoved down.
Yeah, exactly. Do not accept ideas as they are how we put it,
they just put out
to you. Yes, do not accept everything that is said to you.
Take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah, take everything with a grain of salt. Question what is the interest behind such proposals. Nothing is ever value neutral because humans as a species are never really value neutral. We have certain interests behind acting a certain way. I think it's best described by a quote in Now We Begin Ethics. Whenever someone proposes a way of acting, it is never really value neutral. There is always an interest behind their proposal for acting a certain way. So, similarly, any theory that attempts to describe society is not really value neutral. There is a certain interest behind describing society a certain way, such as deviant behavior being
Negative. There's like a negative connotation to it.
exactly. So deviant behavior is not necessarily negative because deviant behavior actually has a function in society. It is, as Durkheim explains, necessary for society because it does provide a certain way of understanding what is not acceptable by society and what should be followed by a regular person in society.
So perhaps the best way to encapsulate everything is that perhaps in the case of the Call of the Night, or perhaps sticking thematically to it. So staying up at night is normatively not desirable. However, within the society, there's an absolute need for night shift workers in order for our society to function.
So I would say beyond there's an absolute need for night shift workers, there is a function that is played by staying up at night, in that it questions the normative expectations of society that people follow a regular sleep cycle, and that it also provides a questioning of the expectations of institutions within our society, in that they promote a certain sleep schedule. So, curfews and whatnot.
I feel like curfews is a bit less related to sleep schedules. There is more of a power play between the authority and the individual. For example, the parents and the child.
Yeah. Potatoes. There is more meaning behind curfews than just that.
Yeah. With that said, I think, well, wouldn't you say that this is a very good roundup to the functionalism episode?
Yes, I hope that my significant inebriation does not hinder the message that I am trying to incorporate.
By your own doing, I might add. But perhaps let's try to encapsulate the message within one sentence. If I could say, it would be that from everything that we have talked about, Ben, it would be all our sociological points of views all points at one thing. We can observe and analyze society in many ways. However, we should never take one way as the absolute truth, and we should seek to endeavor to view society in as many ways as possible in order to get the best understanding of society. And then, as individuals, we should do our best to critically think about these perspectives in order to make the best meaning of it. How would you add on to that?
I think that would be a very, very, well, what would be the word?
Good.
It is,
Goodurous.
yes, it is goodest.
Succinct. Besterous.
Yes, it is the bestest way of putting it. So do not accept anything as the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, as I have quoted. Can't remember from where, but yeah, everything should be questioned. Do not accept anything as pure truth, but take them with a grain of salt. There is always interest behind the way something is portrayed, and question and try to find the underlying meaning behind any social phenomena. Yeah.
Well, I think that is the perspective of a healthy skeptic. Perhaps what I could say is that the absolute truth that you can take away from this episode is that the two of us, the hosts, think that the Jim Beam Bourbon is an absolute 7 out of 10. And then I think if you're looking for a budget option for whiskey to either get drunk or perhaps have at a barbecue, the Jim Beam Bourbon is absolutely worth it.
I think so. And yeah, getting absolutely pissed drunk is also a way of getting the absolute. I think my brain lag. Yeah, I think is the best way of getting an absolute brain lag.
Yes, with aside from the fact that you have the same amount of besots as my laptop during this episode, perhaps what we could say is that if you manage to stick around to the end of this episode, do like, share, and subscribe. Follow us on our social media, and we hope to see you in the next episode.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be more sober.
And next time, I'm looking forward to what Ben has to say on sociology, but perhaps as a slight teaser, next episode is gonna be psychological.
Oh, I might have something to say about that, but yeah, till next time.